The universe seemed safe until they returned. The ancient machines, the harvesters, who once annihilated thousands of worlds, are coming again. And this time, the Galactic Council no longer has the strength to stop them. But then, from a planet labeled the Death World, humanity emerged. They didn't come with pleas, but with relentless survival and warships that could pierce through the darkness itself. This is the war no one dared to imagine, and Earth will not bow. Alert from the Dark Zone. The nightmare began with a bell, but not the kind that rang during routine drills or stellar weather warnings. It was the Red Alert alarm, a shattering sound that echoed through the crystalline halls of the central monitoring station of the Galactic Council. The station, normally operated with cold precision, suddenly seemed feverish. Red lights flashed wildly, and every screen displayed erratic, unreadable signals. Staff from various species rushed between glowing control panels, tapping urgently with 3 fingers, 4 fingers, or even twitching tendrils. No one had a clear explanation. Something was wrong, very wrong. Ambassador Reed stood motionless at the center of the room, amidst a storm of bodies and blaring sirens. In over 3 centuries of service to the Galactic Council, he had never witnessed a breakdown of order so absolute. Tall and slender, his deep violet skin gleamed like liquid mercury under the flashing lights. He did not move, except for his 4 eyes, which darted across data screens. "Report," he commanded, his voice quiet but razor sharp. Like magic, the room fell silent. Only the steady beeping of a system alert remained a pulse that meant one thing. Something massive, fast, strange, and dangerous was approaching. A technician female from the Aluxi species stepped forward, trembling. Her voice came out thin as a thread. "Sir, we've counted 732 ships. They appeared suddenly at the edge of Council space. We detected no warp signatures. They just showed up." Reed walked slowly toward the central screen. The foreign vessels appeared like phantoms. No insignia, no energy leakage, no noise. Yet their forms were massive, squared off, resembling mobile fortresses, each one 3 times the size of a standard patrol cruiser. More alarming, sensor data showed they were emitting thermal radiation intense enough to cook most Council species alive without firing a single weapon. "Are they transmitting?" Reed asked, his voice darker than the shadows it echoed through. "Yes, sir," the technician replied. "They're broadcasting across all communication frequencies, but the language doesn't match anything in our universal database." Reed nodded, unblinking. "Run it through the galactic translator." Seconds later, the system began playing back, a voice deep, low, and precise, each word resonating like the hum of an ancient war engine. "This is Admiral Thomas Wilson of the Interstellar Exploration Fleet, Earth. We come in peace. We request diplomatic contact with the authority managing this region of space." The room fell into dead silence, like it had been thrown into vacuum. "Earth?" Reed repeated, scanning rapidly through the star maps in his mind. That name didn't appear in any navigation, archives, or known system logs. He tapped a control to pull up the galactic map. Trace the origin coordinates of those ships based on their current trajectory. The computer processed for a few seconds, then highlighted a red dwarf system buried deep within a restricted zone, a place long designated by the Council as a death zone, marked by unstable gravity, lethal radiation, and a toxic atmosphere. No species had ever dared to explore it thoroughly. "They came from there?" a junior engineer whispered, almost to himself. Reed gave no answer. He already had a gut feeling, and it wasn't comforting. "Any biosphere data on their origin world?" he asked. Another assistant replied, voice caught in his throat. "It's classified as a Class 12 world, sir." The room hissed with murmurs. Class 12 was the highest, or more precisely, the deadliest ranking on the Council's biosphere scale. A planet like that could kill most Council life forms in minutes. And yet, a species had evolved there, built a fleet, and now arrived at the galactic core as if nothing could stop them. "Display full readouts on their weapons and propulsion systems," Reed ordered. The data that appeared stunned everyone. The holes were encased in multi-layered armor, so thick it defied the known principles of flight. Their energy systems emitted thermal output on par with Nova-class reactors. Their speed exceeded projections. They didn't use any known warp technologies. No teleportation trails, no gateways. They just appeared like a nightmare tearing through the veil of night. No one dared say it aloud, but everyone knew. They were not from friendly space. They came from hell. And now, hell was knocking. From the abyss they emerge. The space between stars is often described as a tranquil sea, vast, calm, and unmoving. But today, it trembled. The warships that arrived from Earth, a planet whose inhabitants called themselves humans, drifted into the borders of the Galactic Council's domain like a mythical armada, rising from an unnamed abyss. They came in defiance of every physical law the advanced species of the galaxy had ever codified. Technicians continued collecting data, but everything they recorded challenged the very notion of logic. Human ships were unlike anything ever designed in Council space. They were not sleek, aerodynamic marvels. They bore no elegant curves, no shimmering energy shields that most species favored for efficiency and aesthetic harmony. Instead, they were brutish, angular, and monolithic, their hulls rough and solid, as if forged from the heart of ancient volcanoes. How? How do these things even fly? A mechanical engineer muttered under his breath, eyes wide with disbelief. No one answered. But fly they did. And not just fly, they moved at speeds that rivaled Council recon cruisers, despite their mass being several hundred times greater. Within their hulls, there was no emission of stable energy fields, no signs of the gravitational dampeners other species relied upon. Instead, they radiated thermal signatures that bordered on catastrophic, as though the core of each vessel housed a miniature hellfire furnace. And, if the readings were accurate, that was only their cruising speed. Ambassador Reed maintained his diplomatic composure, his tall, violet frame perfectly still, but inside, unease tightened like a vice around his chest. It wasn't just the ship's weaponry or the fact that their armor could likely punch through a moon. No, it was their stillness. The way they hung in space, silent and motionless, not as if waiting for permission to speak, but like ancient beings who had planned this moment long ago and were in no rush to act. "We've established a connection, sir," a technician announced. The screen blinked and displayed an image, a being that resembled a biped, structurally familiar to many in the Council, yet denser, more defined, pale skin, deep-set eyes, and most curious of all, only two of them. Among species that had long evolved enhanced sensory perception, seeing a creature with just two eyes was akin to observing a relic from the evolutionary past. But in this room, that gaze froze every breath. "I am Admiral Thomas Wilson," the figure spoke. The voice, even without modulation, was clear like the roar of a dormant engine reborn. "We come in goodwill to initiate a connection between the planet Earth and the Galactic Council." Reed nodded slightly, calling upon every fragment of his diplomatic training. "I am Reed, full representative of the Council. Initial scans indicate that your homeworld's environmental conditions are extreme. By our biosensory metrics, it would be considered outright hostile." Admiral Wilson tilted his head gently, a small movement, but one that exuded quiet confidence. "Extreme? Perhaps to your standards. To us, Earth is home. It is our crucible. It is where we were forged. A world that hammers every cell with solar flares, earthquakes, tsunamis, and oppressive gravity. Every step taken on that world is a trial, and it is those trials that made us who we are." His words spread through the room like an echo from some ancient temple. Scientists, generals, envoys, all fell into a stunned silence. Reed pressed a command. A galactic map illuminated, highlighting the origin point of the human fleet. "The region you emerged from has long been marked as uninhabitable. We lost dozens of exploratory vessels there." "We're aware," Wilson said. "We found fragments of your ships. We grieve for them." Reed didn't ask how they had survived the radiation storms or gravitational chaos that made even Council dreadnoughts avoid the area. He knew there could only be one answer that made sense now, because they came from Earth, a planet that did not permit the weak to survive. "Why now?" Reed asked, his voice sharp as a blade. "Why emerge at this moment?" "We've been observing your council from afar for decades," Wilson replied. "We learned your languages, studied your proceedings. We listened to your debates. We've come to understand the structure of your alliance. We did not wish to arrive as a threat, but the time has come to step out of the shadows." Silence again. This time, a silence of awe, of disbelief, being slowly replaced by an uneasy respect. Reed glanced at the incoming biometric data. "Your ships maintain internal gravity far above the Council standard. The gravity your people consider normal is nearly 3 times what any of our species can withstand. Most of us would collapse after 3 minutes." "We had to increase the internal gravity," Wilson explained casually. "Otherwise, our crews begin to feel lightheaded, their bones weaken." The room pulsed with disbelief. Every textbook, every doctrine on interspecies biology, every assumption about the limits of survival, all suddenly seemed obsolete. The Council's scholars had long dismissed the idea that a species could evolve under such conditions. But humans, they had not only survived, they had thrived. Reed swallowed hard. "Welcome to the Galactic Council, Admiral Wilson," he said, though in his heart, he wasn't yet sure if it was a greeting or a warning. "And thank you for listening," Wilson replied. Then he smiled, a smile flashing white teeth, a primitive biological signal that most evolved species had long abandoned. But on that face, in that moment, it felt like a declaration. The humans had not come to beg, they had come to take their place. And from where they came, only the strong survived. Savages from a death world? The Galactic Council had never faced a situation like this. In thousands of years of interstellar history, they had encountered, guided, and assimilated hundreds of emerging civilizations. Nearly every intelligent species had evolved under ideal conditions, temperate climates, stable gravity, and balanced biospheres. The growth of intellect and technology was always intertwined with biological peace. That was the foundation the Council was built upon, the blueprint for interplanetary civilization. But now, Earth had appeared, and it had shattered every blueprint. Inside the Crystal Hall, the beating heart of the Council's authority, 200 delegates from the member planets had gathered in an emergency session. Voices clashed like storms, hands slammed against consoles, tentacles waved in fury, and eyes flickered with a blend of confusion, disbelief, and fear. "They are savages," bellowed Commander Stone, the high military representative of the Ralnox species. His skin shifted violently from calm blue to blood red, a biological alarm signal in his culture. "Look at how they build their ships. Dense metals, primitive engines, excessive heat, no harmonics, no energy modulation they construct, as if war is their native language." Ambassador Reed stood at the speaker's podium, his demeanor still, his expression unreadable, but his 4 eyes had darkened. "Not savages, Commander," he said slowly, each word cutting through the air like a scalpel. "They were born to survive, and they designed everything around that principle, including themselves." A trembling voice rose from another delegate, clearly shaken. "Their biology, it defies categorization. They move freely under gravitational forces 3 times higher than ours. They breathe an atmosphere laced with corrosive levels of oxygen. They withstand Class M radiation with no shielding." "Precisely," Reed nodded. "And so perhaps it's time we rewrite our definitions." Silence fell over the chamber for a few stunned seconds. But then Commander Stone slammed his fist on the central control table, bringing up a rotating 3D model of a human warship. "Look at this," he barked, pointing at the image. "This is the interior of one of their mid-sized vessels. Gravity levels would crush half the species in this hull. Atmospheric pressure high enough to rupture Elyari lungs. And their fusion reactors, they're operating without any energy dampeners. They live like feral beasts inside armored tombs." And that is precisely why they survive, Reed countered, his voice flaring with intensity. They don't wait for nature to accommodate them. They wrestle with it. They challenge their planet every single day. And from that struggle, they have become a species that the universe must respect. A scientist murmured from the back. We scanned their weapon systems, not energy-based, projectile, kinetic, ballistics, primitive armaments. Commander Stone laughed sharply. Primitive? Exactly. They fire bullets. Metal slugs launched at ridiculous speeds. Weapons every advanced species left behind millennia ago. Reed stepped down from the podium. He reached toward the floating model of the human ship and placed his hand against it. And that, he said, is what terrifies me most. Because our shields, all of them are designed to deflect energy, not raw matter. A single slug moving fast enough doesn't need to be smart. It just needs to hit. A chill swept through the chamber. Even the ambient glow of the crystalline walls seemed to dim. One delegate dared to ask, "Are you saying we have no defenses against them?" Reed nodded solemnly. "I am saying we know nothing about these beings, and that is the greatest danger of all." Stone clenched his fists, the cracking of his joints echoing through the stillness. "So what would you have us do, Ambassador? Hand over the keys to our technology? Let them in and wake up one day to find their warships orbiting every capital in our alliance?" "No," Reed replied, his voice lowering but hardening like forged iron. "I want a conversation, because they did not come to conquer. They came to understand. In all the time they've been observing us, and yes, they have been watching, they've not fired a single weapon. No infiltration, no provocation, only study, only silence. That is not the instinct of invaders. That is the sign of intellect." As if to punctuate his words, the main screen flickered to life, a transmission live from the Earth fleet. "We understand that our presence has caused concern. To demonstrate goodwill, we propose a neutral meeting. Only a single vessel will approach. We will comply with all security protocols you deem necessary." Reed pointed at the message. "You call them savages. But tell me, is this how a savage behaves?" No one answered. Commander Stone exhaled deeply, suppressing his fury. Even if they come in peace, creatures that can bend steel with their bare hands are still a threat. How can we trust that they won't change the moment they sense weakness in us? "We can't be sure," Reed admitted. "But we can be certain of one thing. They have already changed to meet us halfway. They've lowered gravity aboard their ships, modified their atmosphere, sent diplomats, not drones. If we call ourselves a Council of Peace, then we must do the same." The chamber fell into a heavy, contemplative silence. But this time, it wasn't fear that prevailed. It was curiosity, a cautious flicker of hope stirring beneath layers of ancient doubt. Could the beings from a death world become allies? The handshake of power. Neutral Station Number 7. A silent speck floating in the ink-black void of space had suddenly become the focal point of the galaxy. Once used for hosting technical delegations or modest trade conferences, it now stood as the stage for the most dangerous and consequential diplomatic encounter in the history of the Galactic Council. The diplomatic transport from Earth, a compact warship designated Pathfinder, was approaching Docking Bay 3. Its trajectory was flawless, as if drawn by a gravitational compass. No tremors, no hesitation. A single line slicing the void with unwavering purpose. The entire station had been placed under maximum security lockdown. Even the air molecules seemed to hold their breath. Ambassador Reed stood before a double-layered observation window. Next to him was Commander Stone, this time his skin a muted green, the color of controlled alertness in his species. Not calm, just contained. Surrounding them was a team of scientists and technicians, all equipped with cutting-edge biosensors and data recorders. "They're adjusting their internal ship conditions," one technician reported. "Atmospheric pressure, oxygen saturation, G radiation levels, all calibrated to suit Council biology." Reed nodded slowly, eyes locked on the approaching vessel gliding along the docking vector. "They're altering themselves to meet us," he said softly, almost so that only Stone could hear. "The question is, are we brave enough to do the same?" Stone gave no reply. He was checking his sidearm for the 12th time. "They're not here to fight," Reed added, turning toward him. "If they wanted to, they could have reduced this station to debris from 10 astronomical units away." "I know," Stone said, his voice lower than before. "But I also know their bare hands can punch through reinforced steel. I won't let my people die because we got too polite." A metallic clunk echoed through the station, deep and heavy, like a hammer striking the spine of every being present. The Pathfinder had locked into the station's airlock. The tension was tangible. Decontamination systems roared to life. The air circulation tunnel was deployed. Every sensor blinked at peak sensitivity, but the doors didn't open immediately. A pause, deliberate or cautious, stretched into a silence that gave birth to every worst-case scenario imaginable. Then they opened. The first to emerge was Ambassador James Walker, a towering man, broad-shouldered, his expression stoic yet not arrogant. Behind him walked 2 aides, unarmored, unarmed, clad only in minimalist uniforms bearing a 3-dimensional silver emblem of Earth. Reed watched them. Instantly, he saw what no data feed could capture: weight. Not just physical, existential. Walker carried the gravity of someone who had walked through a living hell and never knelt. "Welcome to Neutral Station Number 7, Reed announced, stepping forward. "I am Ambassador Reed. We've prepared a suitable chamber for our dialogue." Walker paused, offering a small smile, not warm, but sincere. "Thank you, Ambassador," he replied, extending his hand. "In our culture, a handshake is a greeting. I understand that may not align with other species' customs. Also, fair warning, we tend to have a strong grip." Reed looked at the thick, calloused hand. He didn't hesitate. He extended his own and clasped it. The handshake was firm, powerful, but surprisingly controlled. Beneath the human skin, Reed could feel muscle wound tight like coiled cables, humming with quiet energy. "Let's proceed," Reed said. The delegation walked down a long corridor toward the conference chamber. Engineers from the council had reinforced the seating using military-grade composite alloys, the kind designed for creatures weighing over 4 tons. And still, when Walker sat, the chair gave the faintest crack under the pressure. His body was built for extremes and to endure what would break others. The meeting began in silence. Walker didn't rush. He placed a small device on the table. It activated, projecting a rotating holographic image of Earth, a vibrant blue sphere. Yes, but in every frame, there were floods, volcanic eruptions, snowstorms, hurricanes, and lightning strikes. "This is our home," Walker said, "a place where a storm can erase a city, where temperatures can swing 40 degrees in days, where growing food is a battle, where breathing air and staying alive is never guaranteed." A council scientist finally spoke, voice tinged with awe. "How do your people survive such conditions? And space travel, how do you shield yourselves from radiation?" "We adapted to endure," Walker replied. "Our bones are denser. Our muscles are more resilient. Our immune systems are aggressive. We design our ships like armor, not for luxury, but survival. Ironically, space is kinder than Earth." Silence enveloped the room. Here was a species that didn't bend to nature. It bent nature to its will, not just surviving the chaos, but outgrowing it. Reed glanced sideways. Commander Stone, the ever-skeptical warrior, was now engaged in quiet conversation with one of the human aides, asking about starship hull designs and radiation shielding. The change had begun, and in the depths of Reed's mind, a quiet thought took root. If these are their diplomats, what do their real soldiers look like? The first battle. The alarm blared without warning, not from the humans, but from a remote region of space near the Galactic 7 gas cloud, where an Earth vessel was conducting a high-level cosmic survey. The ship, named Explorer, was a research vessel, not a warship, crewed entirely by Earth's civilian science teams. The emergency signal reached the Galactic Council's Central Command. Level 7 critical alert. the duty officer announced. The Explorer is being intercepted by 5 pirate cruisers. Identified as the Red Eye Syndicate, heavily armed, infamous for breaking through an entire frontier planet's defense grid. In the operations chamber, Commander Stone stared at the tactical screen, his skin darkening with tension. "Can we dispatch reinforcements?" "Not in time," a technician replied grimly. "Based on current velocity vectors, Explorer has less than 6 minutes before full hostile engagement and probable destruction." No one spoke. A research vessel, unarmed and alone, was now facing one of the most feared raiding factions in the galaxy. Then a direct feed from the Explorer came online. "This is Captain Rogers of the Explorer, Earth Registry. Our vessel contains classified research equipment. We request permission to continue our survey mission without interference." The pirate response crackled over open frequency, sharp, mocking. "You're alone. Your ship's a relic. That thick metal hull? What is that, a joke? Surrender or be erased?" Laughter echoed from the pirate side. Their sneers transmitted for all to hear in the Council's command center. Then Explorer replied, not with words, with fire and steel. From the flank of the ship, armored panels folded outward like opening wings, revealing what had previously appeared to be sensor arrays. They weren't. They were kinetic launchers. No screaming plasma, no humming laser beams. Just pure metal slugs of solid alloy launched at near relativistic speeds. 2 of the pirate ships, notorious terrormongers of the galactic frontier, were obliterated in the blink of an eye. Precision entry wounds, clean as surgical incisions, punched from bow to stern. Their energy shields, designed to deflect light and plasma, meant nothing against raw inertia, against the brutal force of physics. "That's impossible," a council officer whispered. "No energy discharge, no power fluctuations. They're not using any advanced weapon systems." "No," Reed murmured. "They're using basic physics." Explorer began to move, not like a research vessel, but like a warship forged in the crucible of survival. Its auxiliary thrusters kicked into high-frequency microbursts, shifting orientation faster than the Council's own targeting systems could track. The steel hull, once mocked as archaic, now acted as an unbreakable bulwark, shrugging off scattered return fire like pebbles against a mountain. The pirates never had a chance. 2 more ships exploded under the barrage of hypervelocity rounds, each shot a carefully calculated vector equation, not guided by AI, but by trajectory, mass, and timing. No need for smart weapons. Just aim true and fire. The last remaining ship, the command cruiser of Red Captain himself, turned to flee. Explorer fired once more. A single projectile struck the secondary engine module, crippling propulsion without detonating the ship. A warning, swift, surgical, sovereign. "This is Captain Rogers of Explorer," the voice transmitted calmly. "All hostile vessels have been neutralized. Our crew requires medical extraction, requesting deployment of rescue and medevac units." The Council's command center fell into total silence. They had just witnessed a research vessel, not a military platform, annihilate one of the most dangerous pirate groups in the galaxy. Using technology the Council had abandoned thousands of years ago. "We," Stone muttered, his voice brittle. "We couldn't have done that. None of our ships could pierce pirate shielding like that." Reed narrowed his eyes. "Because we assumed modern weapons meant lasers and energy-based systems. But the humans, they aren't modern. They're effective. And more than that, they didn't flaunt that power. They used it only when they had to." Over the following hours, Council medevac teams arrived at the scene. They retrieved the wounded pirates, former predators now reduced to drifting wreckage. Captain Rogers declined all commendations. "We were merely defending ourselves," he said. "We came here to explore the universe, not to prove anything, but if we're threatened, we will respond." Reed understood. This wasn't just a warning to pirates. This was a lesson for the entire galaxy. Do not mistake humanity's civility for weakness, because when they strike back, the universe stops being quiet. Rescue through radiation storms? This time, the alarm didn't scream or shriek. It didn't blare through corridors with piercing urgency. Instead, it struck deep low, resonant, like a mournful bell tolling from the depths of space. Each chime seemed to echo through the very foundation of the Galactic Council's Capitol building, forcing every high-ranking official to abandon meetings and rush to the Emergency Response Command. On the central display, the Vega 3 orbital telescope fed a live stream from deep space. A massive star, Vega Prime, was in chaos. Its hydrogen layers were tearing apart, plasma waves erupting like titanic fire tsunamis, rising and crashing in slow, apocalyptic arc. "We confirmed the data," a physicist choked out. "Vega Prime is entering a supernova phase. Estimated detonation in less than 48 hours. Ambassador Reed felt the blood run cold through his veins. "Population of the system? 3 million lives," the logistics officer replied, voice tight with dread. 4 inhabited planets. The existing shield arrays won't survive the radiation output. Commander Stone's hands clenched into fists. "Deploy every heavy transport we have. Start evacuations now." "We won't make it," the logistics chief said, wide-eyed. "Most of our long-range transports are bottlenecked on the western border due to the trade crisis. What few ships remain aren't built to approach a stellar event of this magnitude. The radiation exceeds safe thresholds by a factor of 6. In the room full of admirals, scholars, and diplomats, an invisible wave passed through, not fear, not panic, but something more devastating: helplessness. And then a new signal flashed on screen, the emblem of Earth. "This is Admiral Thomas Wilson of the Earth Fleet," came the now familiar voice. "We are monitoring the situation in the Vega system. With your permission, we would like to offer assistance." No one breathed. Stone turned toward Reed. "We're talking about 3 million people." Reed gave a slow, deliberate nod. "And they may be the only hope we've got." The screen shifted to live communication. Wilson's face appeared, not grim, not anxious, but focused. Calm. Almost eager. "That radiation exceeds even the experimental safety zones," a council scientist warned. Wilson gave a short laugh. "Sir, that radiation level? We call that Tuesday on Earth." It sounded like a joke, but no one laughed. 1 hour later, 30 massive Earth transport vessels launched toward Vega, at full burn, roaring through radiation spikes and magnetic storms, with a brazenness that left Council observers stunned. These were regions so hostile, Council ships wouldn't even transmit signals through them, and the humans flew straight in. In the central command room, all eyes locked on the life sign monitors. Numbers fluctuated, surged, then stabilized. The Earth ships were holding. "They're not being affected?" a Council engineer whispered. "No," murmured the chief physicist. "Their hulls are quadruple, layered over our dreadnoughts, and their anti-radiation cores aren't shielding, they're absorbing it. I think they're feeding off the flux." And that wasn't all. The Earth vessels deployed enormous metallic tunnels, evacuation corridors that extended between orbit and the planet's surfaces. Primitive, industrial, brutalist. Nothing like the elegant energy stream tubes the Council preferred for instant transport. But they worked, and they didn't fail. Even when one tunnel buckled under a sudden magnetic shockwave, 2 human engineers exited the airlock by hand. No drones, no mech suits, just 2 people wearing what looked like dangerously thin protective gear. Commander Stone nearly shouted, "They're committing suicide." But they returned. "We're good," one engineer said through the comms, brushing soot off his sleeve. "Just a little cosmic sunburn. Jones and I are due a week off anyway." A week off after physically repairing a lifeline conduit while standing inside a radiation storm that had already melted 3 of the Council's robotic satellites. 3 million souls. Evacuated. Every single one. And then it came. The star exploded. The supernova ripped through the cosmos like a blade of blinding light. Observatories across multiple systems recorded the wave a shock front powerful enough to shear steel and disrupt gravity wells. Any Council ship in the blast zone would have been annihilated. The Earth ships, Scorched, yes. Singed and blackened at the edges, but intact. In the command center, Reed turned to Captain Rogers, just recently returned from his battle with galactic pirates. "How did your ship survive that?" Reed asked, still stunned. Rogers took a drink of water, shrugged slightly. "Back on Earth," he said, "we lived next to active nuclear plants. We breathed radioactive dust after meltdowns. We walked through magnetosphere breaches with nothing but plastic visors. We didn't avoid danger. We trained to step into it." Reed stared at the glowing data map. Every statistic, every metric defied centuries of scientific consensus. Everything the Council thought they knew, undone in a single act of survival. And suddenly, Reed understood something he hadn't dared to believe until now. Earth wasn't just a death world. It was a forge that built gods, the destroyer of galaxies. Space has never truly been silent. Though the human ear may detect no sound, the universe is far from still. Telescopes, sensors, and quantum resonators constantly pick up the tremors of the cosmos, the groans of dying stars, the howls of black holes consuming light, and occasionally, the echoes of things that should not exist anymore. Deep beneath the capital planet of the Galactic Council, in a vault thought to be sealed forever, the ancient doors of the Forbidden Archive slid open for the first time in over a century. Ambassador Reed led the special delegation. Behind him walked Admiral Wilson, Captain Rogers, Commander Stone, and 2 strategic officers from Earth. There were no reporters, no cameras, only raw, unfiltered truth and a scar carved into the very spine of galactic history. The massive door, thousands of tons in weight, creaked as it revealed the hall of cataclysmic records, a vault of silent horrors, sealed to protect not just knowledge, but sanity itself. Here lay the secrets the Council had deemed too dangerous for the public to know. Reed didn't turn as he spoke. His voice echoed off the black stone. "What you're about to see nearly wiped us out, not once but 3 times over the last 1,000 years." The screen activated. The first image wasn't of a ship. It was a nightmare clad in steel. Gray plating, but not mechanical, more like living armor. Pulsating faintly, covered in ridges and folds like muscle and bone. It didn't fly. It didn't thrust or glide. It consumed space, bent the stars around it, warped every law physics had ever known. "We call them harvesters," Reed said grimly. "Galactic reapers. No one knows their origin, no signal, no language, no reason. Every 200 years, they appear. They devour planets in their path and vanish like ghosts." Wilson stepped closer, eyes locked on the footage. A swarm of harvester ships, each the size of a small moon, swept across a planetary system. Thousands of Council warships tried to resist and burst like dust in a windstorm. Nothing pierced the harvester armor. Council energy shields collapsed inward, siphoned by the very presence of these juggernauts. "The first wave, we lost 60% of Council-controlled space," Reed continued. "The second 40, the most recent one, we braced and still lost 30. Wilson's voice was low, cold. "When's the next?" "Within 5 years," Reed answered, "maybe sooner." Captain Rogers watched in silence as the footage rolled on a planet's core, being drained in under 16 minutes, its crust collapsing into glowing void. "Do they have a weakness?" Reed shook his head. "Not one we can exploit. Energy weapons don't breach their armor. Physical attacks are dispersed by anti-pressure field systems. They have no crew, no supply lines, and they move in perfect formations that never break." That's when Colonel Linnea, one of Earth's military analysts, stepped forward. "Replay file 9, she said. Vertical combat angle." Reed looked to the technician, who nodded. The feed rewound. Linnea sat down, eyes scanning each millisecond. "Freeze it here," she said, pointing. The screen paused. "There," she indicated at a sliver of refracted plasma along the harvester's 3rd shield layer. It bounced the energy back, but not entirely. "There's a disruption ripple." "You're saying it has a weak spot?" a Council strategist asked. "No," Linnea replied. "I'm saying they don't think they need one. That ripple isn't a failure, it's neglect. Their armor isn't designed for defense, it's built on the assumption they'll never need to defend. Wilson nodded slowly. And maybe it's time they met something that proves them wrong. Reed turned around. You believe humanity can fight these things? Roger stepped forward, placing his hand on the holographic model of the Harvester. We don't just believe. We've already begun redesigning our entire combat doctrine based on your data. These things aren't invisible. They've just never met an enemy that hits hard enough. Stone narrowed his eyes. And you think you're that enemy? Wilson didn't smile. We come from a planet where volcanic lightning, radioactive oceans, acid rain, and tectonic chaos are just part of daily life. We didn't evolve by hiding from danger. We evolved through it. If these machines are unstoppable because no one's ever hit back, then maybe it's time they tasted Earth's fist. A chill passed through Reed's spine. They weren't afraid. The same species that had baffled the Council with their irrational lifestyle, their primitive weapons, their monstrous ships, their terrifying biology, were now the only ones looking the apocalypse in the eye and walking forward. Reed turned back to the screen. The Harvesters, destroyers of thousands of worlds, drifted across the void like titans. And in that moment, he realized, perhaps only those who were born in hell would dare to enter someone else's nightmare. In the uncharted western reaches of the Delari constellation, where the Galactic Council's influence had never extended, a new theater of war emerged. This remote frontier became the battleground for the first interstellar counteroffensive in recorded history. At the clandestine Omega-6 coordination station, nestled within an unnamed asteroid, fleets from two civilizations assembled in unison. The sleek silver vessels of the Council stood alongside humanity's imposing black steel warships, a juxtaposition of divergent military doctrines. Precision and finesse contrasted with brute force and resilience. Admiral Wilson, the supreme commander of the operation, addressed the assembled leaders. Your previous strategies? He began, focused on defense-erecting barriers and deploying shields. But our adversary knows no fear, and walls cannot halt a flood of blood. He activated a holographic display, revealing the Harvester fleet's formation. They advance in a V formation, reminiscent of predatory fish. Why? Because they believe no one dares to strike at their heart. Commander Stone interjected, and you intend to do just that? Wilson nodded. Not alone, together, but we will lead the charge. All eyes turned to humanity's three colossal warships, Hammerfall, Leviathan, and Gauntlet. These behemoths boasted armor 8 times thicker than the Council's standard, powered by hybrid quantum fields and Earth's compressed matter cores. Their primary weapons were railguns, capable of launching tank-sized projectiles at near-light speeds each, shot potent enough to obliterate a small moon. We'll penetrate the Harvester formation, draw their fire, and target the vulnerable left core sensors, their slowest reacting defense point. Ambassador Reed inquired, and who will exploit that weakness? You will, Wilson replied. The assault commenced on the 47th cycle post-mobilization. 3 Harvester scouts materialized as anticipated, gliding through space like metallic leviathans. Their sensors detected anomalous energy signatures from the human fleet, yet they pressed on, unaccustomed to retreat. Hammerfall spearheaded the advance. Its control systems trembled under the strain of combined energy fields. Hull temperatures soared, nearing the metal's combustion point. Still, it maintained course. Distance, 200 units, reported the ship's engineer. Railgun 1, prepare to fire, commanded Wilson. A synchronized signal echoed, and the first projectile launched silent, invisible, a mere fragment of metal hurtling at velocities that defied comprehension. It pierced the first Harvester's hull, causing the massive vessel to stagger a sight unseen in galactic history. The Harvesters retaliated instantly, unleashing ancient plasma beams as intense as condensed suns. Gauntlet absorbed the initial onslaught, its armor scorched, auxiliary engines damaged, yet it pressed forward. They strike with divine force, assuming no survivors. They are mistaken, Wilson transmitted. Flanking maneuvers by Council ships ensued. Enhanced with human-engineered armor and advanced tactical processors, they moved with unprecedented agility, targeting the exposed vulnerabilities revealed by humanity's initial assault. A Harvester scout exploded not from energy weapons, but from internal collapse induced by relentless kinetic impacts. Cheers erupted across command stations. Disbelief turned to exhilaration. Yet the battle raged on. The remaining Harvesters adjusted their formation a first in their combat history. From Leviathan, Captain Rogers observed, "They're adapting, but their learning curve lags behind our strikes." A second railgun salvo incapacitated another Harvester, its navigation core obliterated, sending it spiraling into a nearby asteroid. Only one remained. Commander Stone, aboard the leading Council vessel, ordered a full-scale assault. For the first time, the entire Allied fleet surged forward, inspired by humanity's audacious path. Within 5 minutes, all 3 Harvester scouts were annihilated. Not a single Allied ship was lost. In the command center, Reed gazed at the tactical display, heart-pounding. "We've done it. We've struck down the nightmare." And it was humanity once deemed barbaric that led the charge. From Earth, we come. The first victory over the 3 Harvester scout ships didn't just shake the Galactic Council, it rippled across entire star systems. Regions once deemed death zones, where ancient species had once surrendered without a fight, now bore witness to an impossible sight. The ancient predator had bled, and it was humanity, the children of a death world, that had inflicted the wound. In the Council's emergency war chamber, generals and strategic leaders sat in tense silence around a circular table. Across from them stood Earth's military delegation. Gone were the scoffs and side-eyed doubt. In their place remained only silence, a silence carved by the weight of undeniable power. Those were only scout vessels, one Council commander spoke up. What about their main fleet? Surely they won't be caught off guard again. Wilson nodded. We agree. He reached to the console. The room darkened. A 3-dimensional map hovered above the table, displaying the formation of the main Harvester force ships 5 times the size of the Scouts, equipped with planet-destroying machinery, core siphoning systems, and engines capable of grinding moons into fuel. Our 3 ships alone won't be enough, Wilson said. That's why we haven't sent in our main force. Reed narrowed his eyes. You haven't? Wilson offered a cold, measured smile. It was the kind of smile that didn't ask for permission. We didn't commit our fleet in the first encounter not out of distrust, but because we were waiting for you to understand. This isn't just a war of weapons. It's a war of existence. The projection changed. From a distant quadrant of the galaxy, a massive rift unfolded in space, not a standard Council wormhole, but a tear in reality itself. It was powered by a form of spatial folding once banned by the Council, labeled impossible. Through this rift, the Earthborn core emerged. No bright light, no radiant energy, just darkness sliding into existence, like nightmares crossing over into the waking world. This, Wilson said, is the 9th Guardian Fleet Earthborn core, our deepest strategic reserve. Not for patrol, not for deterrence. It has only one purpose: to end what cannot be negotiated. Stone's voice cracked slightly. These ships, they have no windows, no external sensors. They don't need them, Colonel Linnea answered. They're controlled through direct neural interface. The pilot plugs their mind into the ship. Every shot is a conscious decision. There is no lag, no margin for error. The Council was stunned. Earthons, considered a primitive, barbaric death world, had just unveiled the heart of a military engine that did not require permission to act. At the outer rim of the Icarian constellation, where the core systems of the Harvesters had first emerged, the real counteroffensive began. The Earthborn core moved in first. The Oblivion-class ship siege, nearly 30 kilometers long, bore neutron railgun batteries, cold fusion reactors, and carbon-compressed armor, strong enough to withstand direct supernova impact. They didn't move fast. They advanced slowly, silently, like tombs floating across the sky. The main Harvester formation reacted immediately. 19 colossal vessels shifted into defensive position, deploying massive static energy shields to block the incursion. "They think we're afraid of those shields," Rogers said aboard the Wendigo, one of the Earthborn vessels under his command. He opened the wideband communication channel to the entire fleet. "This is Rogers from Earth. It's time. Let's show them why we survive." The order to fire was given. The railguns didn't flash or glow. They simply roared with vibration, and the very fabric of space trembled in response. Each slug weighed nearly 20 tons. No warheads, no explosive charge, just raw, brute force. And when the first rounds collided with the Harvester shields, they didn't bounce. They tore through. The shields shattered into clouds of radioactive fragments. The offensive continued. Council warships, now reinforced with human-designed frames, rushed forward, fanning out like wings of steel. Their new energy weapons, powered by Earth-based core systems, struck precisely at weak points identified from the scout battle data. For the first time, a full-sized Harvester vessel exploded. It didn't erupt in fire. There was no flare of light. Instead, reality itself tore open, as if the universe refused to let that thing exist any longer. On the command deck, Wilson turned to Reed. "We didn't come to prove anything," he said. "We came because if the Harvesters win there, won't be anything left worth going home to." Reed nodded silently. He knew, deep in his soul, that this war was no longer about weapons, territory, or civilizations. It was about something far older. Who would fall first, those born from light, or those forged in dark and